So if you go ahead and lay right down on the back, I'm just gonna let the feet come out about hips distance apart. And just let the arms rest down by your side here. Really just let the shoulders become heavy and expand across the chest. Softening the jaw. Maybe closing the eyes if you wish. And just begin to tune into the breath and the sensations that you're feeling in the body. Feeling that rise and fall of the belly. Noticing any areas today that might feel like they need a little bit of work. This is your practice. This is whatever you need. And the option is yours to keep your eyes closed, but we're going to press the low back down into the floor. So that's going to engage some of your lower abdominal muscles. So the section below the belly button, just above the pubic bone. And then you're going to try to keep that back nice and flat. You're going to inhale, lifting that right foot up, and then exhale to slowly lower it back down. And then inhale, lifting the left foot up. Exhale to slowly lower it back down. And then as you kind of flow between the right and the left here, check in with the shoulders. Make sure you're not gripping in the neck, the jaw. Stay soft there. Let's do 2 more on each side. Just waking up, saying hello to the core. Great job. Release the feet back down to the floor. You're going to walk your feet out as wide as your mat here. Hands come out to the side. And just begin to windshield wiper those knees from side to side. But try to keep your pelvis and those hip bones from rocking back and forth. So we're really getting into the internal and external rotation motions of your hip joint. So that just means that your hip is turning in and out. And then come back up through center, heel toe your feet back in towards your mat here. You're gonna come over onto your right side here. We'll do both sides so it doesn't matter. And then you're gonna extend those hands out nice and long in front of you. And then you're gonna inhale to open that left hand or that hand up and over. And then rotate to release. So keeping the knees stacked up on top of each other, just flowing between these two motions here, just to get some gentle rotation in the spine. And let's do 1 more. Great job. Come back up through center and shift over onto the opposite side, going at your own pace here. Moving with intention. And then inhale, open up and come into a twist. And then exhale, release. Great job. All right, so come back through center here onto your back. And you're gonna hover the right foot and grasp the back of the thigh. Inhale to lift up, drawing the toes up to the shins and straightening that knee. And then exhale to release, bringing the toes down. And we're just kind of flowing between those two motions, trying to straighten that knee a little bit more every time, getting into the hamstrings in the back of the leg here. Great job. And then grasping the back of the thigh and straightening the leg as much as you can. And then grabbing the inner part of the leg, so I'm behind the knee here, I'm gonna lower the leg down and out to the side. Really feeling some length inside that inner thigh. Maybe you don't go as far right now. This is still the beginning part of your practice. You're still warming up those tissues. Bend the knee and bring that foot back down onto the floor. Step your left foot up, grasping the back of the thigh. Inhale to straighten the knee, drawing the toes up to the shins, and then release to point the toe down. Inhale, lift up. So I like to think that the back of the leg here is kind of being flossed over the joint. And we're just kind of bringing some mobility, some new nutrition into those tendons and the muscles. Great job. And then release out to the side, grasping the inner part of the leg. You're not going all the way down here, just still being gentle to your body. And then release to come back up, bending that knee. Great job. And let's work our way over onto our tabletop here. We're going to take a couple of rounds of cat-cow here, dropping the belly down, inhale to look up, and then exhale to round the spine and look down. And then find a neutral spine. And then we're going to bump the hips off to the left, take your gaze over, and then come back through center, take your gaze over to the right. This kind of sideways bending here, really great for the spine. Great job. All right, so we're going to take our hip mobility matrix here. So pressing the hips back down toward the heels. Inhale, roll it up to tabletop. Exhale, shift those hips back. And then inhale, roll it back up. So not putting too much pressure on the knees or the hips. So just going to where your range of motion allows you to go. Key here is to work with that breath, noticing the articulations in the spine, the hips, the knees, even the wrists and fingers when you come up onto the hands. Great job. Last one here, and we're going to meet in our tabletop. And pick a leg, any leg. You're going to send it off to the side, allowing the foot to become flat to the floor and the toe to point forward. And just begin to rock back and forth again. So checking in with that knee and that it's under the hip here. So we don't want to do anything wonky with the hip going off to the side too much. So keep that in a good alignment. Great job. Release to come back up through center here. You're going to swap out your feet, extending that leg out nice and long. Knee is under hip and begin to rock back and forth. Wow, the right is tighter than the left today. Great job. So then release that knee so that it's back underneath the hip. So we're going to shift your weight onto the right leg. Go ahead and extend the left leg back behind you, and then you're going to crisscross it off to the right side of your mat. So we're kind of across the body here. Begin to rock back and forth on the toe and feel that stretch in the outer right hip. If this is aggravating or you're getting any pinching sensation, just come back to midline here and just rock back and forth over the toe here. All right, and then take it back through center. We're gonna hover the right foot out, extend it out nice and long again, and then crisscross it over the left. Begin to rock back and forth. Great job. Bringing that knee underneath the hip again. All right, so we're gonna stamp our left foot up to the sky and begin to make little circles with that knee. No rhyme or reason, just draw a circle, whatever feels good. And then go ahead and reverse your circle. You can make it as big as you want or as little as you want. Just trying to keep that hip over the knee on that standing leg. Great job. Release that knee down to the floor. Shift your weight over onto it. Stamp your right foot up to the ceiling now. And then we're just going to make gentle circles on this right side. Again, checking in to make sure that the hip isn't drifting over the knee. And then reverse your direction. Great job. All right. So then go ahead and roll it up onto the knees, draw the shoulders down and back, coming into a little back bend here for your camel pose. And then release the hips down onto the heels, walk your hands out in front of you for your extended child's pose. Perhaps your knees come out nice and wide and rest your belly in between the thighs so that your forehead can come down to the floor. And just find your breath here. Find that length throughout the spine. You rock your forehead from side to side on the mat. And then come back into center and just rest. Just be here for a moment. Enjoying that length in the hips and the low back. Feeling that pressure of the belly into the thighs when you inhale. Take your gaze up between the hands. Go ahead and press it up onto the hands. You're going to tuck the toes and send the hips up and back into your first downward dog. And I suggest maybe bending the knees generously and just pedaling those heels out as your first downward dog of the day. Take your gaze up between the hands. Shift your weight forward so that the shoulders are over the wrists. Sink the hips down into your high plank. Press the heart space up between the shoulders, engaging that core. If you want a little bit of a core challenge, you're going to alternate lifting the right toe, left toe, right toe, left toe, and then one more. Great job. Send the hips up and back into your down dog. Go ahead and walk the heels out. You're going to take your gaze up between the hands and begin to walk the toes up to meet the hands, trying to keep a flat back here. Walking the feet out, hips distance apart, generously bending the knees. Allowing the belly to rest on the thighs. And then grasping the opposite hand to opposite elbow. And just letting the head and shoulders become heavy. You can just sway from side to side. And then softly release those shoulders, the hands, the head. Begin to straighten the knees as you roll it up one little spinal segment at a time. Till the last thing that comes up is the top of the head. Heel toe those feet together so that the big toes are touching. Maybe the inner thighs are touching. Closing the eyes. Drawing shoulders down and back, and then spiral the palms to face forward. Standing tall and proud in this mountain pose. You can just sink your weight into your heels as you bend the knees, sending the hips back and sending the arms either in front of you or up overhead. Flattening out the back by drawing the belly in toward the spine. Soften the shoulders away from the ears, and then sink it down a little deeper for your chair pose. Bring those hands to heart center. You're going to take a spinal twist in this chair pose here. So that left elbow is going to come across to the outside of the right leg. Press that elbow in as you kind of try to get the hands in front of the sternum here. Making sure that the knees are in line with each other, so if that left knee pops out, just gently bring it back into that alignment. And then release back through center, staying in the chair pose here, taking that spinal twist over to the left now. Again, checking in to make sure that right knee isn't popping forward. If it is, just bring it back into alignment. Sink those hips down. And then you're going to come back through center. Inhale to bring it back up into your mountain pose. Inhale, sweep the arms up overhead. Exhale, coming into a forward fold. Inhale, flat back, creating a nice long line from the top of the head all the way down to your tailbone. A little lift in the back of the head. Strengthening those deep neck flexors. Soft bend in the knees, stepping that left foot back behind you. We're opening up into our warrior two. So keeping the shoulders stacked over the hip bones here. Drop that knee down so that it's over the ankle. Soften those shoulders as you float the arms out, reaching from that fingertip to fingertip. Nice powerful warrior two here. Taking your gaze down that front finger, building that strength in your front thigh. Go ahead and flip the front palm up toward the sky. Exhale, reverse warrior. Imagine you have a string attached to the tip of your finger and it's subtly pulling you up toward the sky. Kind of exploring those sensations in the side of the body when you do that. Bringing those arms up, go ahead and bring that front elbow to the front knee. And then float that left hand up for your extended side angle. Reaching from the fingertip all the way down to the outer edge of that foot. And then go ahead and pivot on that back foot so that the hands come down. You're framing that front foot. Drawing the shoulders down and back, creating a nice long line throughout the spine. For your runner's lunge, go ahead and drop the back knee down to the floor and untuck the toe. Inhale, draw the shoulders down and back, peeling the chest up off of that thigh. Sweep the arms up overhead. Maybe you want to lace those fingers together. Index finger points up to the sky. Exhale, little baby back bend here, feeling that length throughout the quadricep muscles of the tops of the thighs. Breathing here, just being. And then framing that foot here. You're going to heel toe that right foot off to the outer edge of the mat. Plant those hands right on your mat and tuck the back toe, covering that knee. Again, trying to get that nice length throughout the spine. If you find that you're rounding, it might be a nice option to have your blocks handy to lift you up. Go ahead and press that elbow into the knee to open up that hip a little. Again, staying active in that back leg. Always an option to bring the knee down to the floor if that's a little too much. Great job. Plant those hands on the floor. You're going to press into the back foot to step it back, high plank, and into your downward facing dog. Pedal those heels out. Take your gaze up between the hands. We're going to walk it up again. Bringing those big toes together, the heels, bending the knees, sweeping the arms up overhead. Find your chair pose again. Sink those hips down. Draw that belly button in. Kind of squeeze the thighs together to create a little more activation throughout the hip joints. So we're going to shift your weight onto the left foot and step the right one back to find your warrior two on the other side. I'm going to turn to face you. Drawing the shoulders down and back, engaging core here. Sink it into that front thigh. Stay nice and long here from that fingertip to fingertip. Take your gaze down that front middle finger. And then flip that front palm. You're going to take a side bend to find your reverse warrior. Imagine that string again attached to the tip of the middle finger as it's pulling you up toward the sky. Windmill those arms, front elbow comes down to the front knee for your extended side angle. Drop the shoulder down away from the ear. Sink it down a little deeper into that thigh. Pivot on the back foot so that you're squared off at the front of your mat, making any adjustments in the feet. Sink it down into your runner's lunge. Again, if you need your blocks to be handy here, to bring the floor up to you a bit. That's the demonstration. Drop that back knee, untuck the toe, and then sweep the arms up, maybe coming into a little baby back bend here, lacing the fingers overhead so that the index fingers point up to the sky. Feeling that length that you're creating throughout the front of the right thigh. Sweeping the arms down, coming into the center of the mat. Begin to heel toe that left foot off to the outer edge. You're going to tuck the back toe and hover the knee again. Likewise, if you want the blocks to be on the floor to lift you up a little bit. All about that spinal alignment. Press that elbow into the knee to give you a little more openness in the hip. Good job. Release the hand back down to the floor. Move your blocks off to the side if you were using them. Plant your hands in the center of your mat. You're going to step it back, high plank, and then into your downward facing dog. Pedal those heels out, drop the shoulders away from the ears. We're going to plant our left foot in the center of the mat. Inhale, float that right leg up, and exhale, opening up the hip, bending that knee, and drawing some circles with the knee. And then reverse your circles. Square off the hips, and then draw that knee up to the nose. We're stepping it through for a pigeon pose on the right, creating length in that left leg from the hip, the knee, all the way down to the toe. Really sinking into that right hip. Maybe using a block if you need that under your seat or a blanket. So how lifted can we be in this pose here? This is where the pose happens. Nice long spine. Keeping that length in the spine, begin to hinge at the hip to either come elbows to floor or block. If you would like, you could rest your forehead on your block. And we're going to be here for a moment here. Just breathing. Feeling that openness in the hip. Inhaling deeply into that space, those areas of tension. And then exhale, letting go of all of that tension, finding new ranges of motion, even those little subtle ranges. And just continue to breathe, drawing your attention to the breath when you feel like you might be struggling a little bit. Pressing into the elbows or the hands, come up and out of that pose. You're going to tuck your back toe and hover the knee, stepping the right foot up and back, downward facing dog. Noticing the differences that you feel between that right hip and the left hip. And then we're taking that on the other side here. So plant the right foot in the center of the mat. Inhale, float the left leg up. And then opening up the hip for three-legged dog. I'm just drawing some circles with that knee, going one direction and then the opposite direction. Squaring off the hips, pointing the knee down. Drawing that knee up to the nose as you step it through for your pigeon pose on the left. Creating length in that right hip, all the way down to the knee and the foot. Again, sitting nice and tall here, drawing the shoulders down and back, length in the spine. Setting yourself up with any props that you might need for this pose. Maybe a blanket under your seat. You might notice that one side feels different than the other, and it's okay to do different supports on each side. But once you feel ready and secure, you can walk yourself down onto your elbows or onto your block. Maybe using a block for your forehead. Just finding that breath again, taking up space with each exhale, because once we create space, you have more room to grow. So we're creating space in the joint. And with each exhale, we're releasing the tension that was associated with that growth. And continue to focus on the breath, bringing that attention back to it as the mind starts to wander. You're always in control of the breath. It's always with you. You always have it as a tool to find some relaxation and ease. And then press into those elbows. Move that block off to the side if you were using it, and work your way back up. So we're going to shift our weight onto our seat here, opening up at the hip. Great job. All right. So bringing those feet together, bound ankle pose. If you're having a hard time getting those knees down to the floor, which doesn't need to happen, you can give yourself a little bit of support under the thighs, bringing the heels in toward the pubic bone, drawing those shoulders down and back, creating some length and lift in the torso. Maybe close the eyes, feel an experience of what you just created for yourself in your hips. If you're using your blocks, go ahead and send them off to the side. And send your right leg out nice and long, bringing that left foot in toward the thigh. Sitting tall, and then exhale to bring that hand inside the knee, floating that arm up and over. Key here is to anchor that hip down into the floor so that we're creating some length, maximizing that stretch in the left side of the body. Noticing each little muscle in between the ribs, muscles that attach the ribs down to the pelvic bone, to the top of your hip crest here. We have a vast network of fascia in our low backs. They're highly innervated by nerves, so they're very sensitive. So we're just kind of wringing that tissue out, bringing new hydration into that area. So it's important to stay so hydrated because each of those tissues in our bodies depend on it. Inhale to lift up. Go ahead and swap the feet out. Growing tall again. Exhale, bringing that back of the hand to the inside of the knee. Inhale, float that right arm up. And then exhale, coming into your side bend, anchoring that hip down to the floor. Again, every time you exhale, you're just getting into that experience a little more of that stretch. And then using that core to lift you up and out, extending those legs out nice and long into your wide-legged. Imagine that you're being lifted here. So how much length, how much space can you create between each vertebrae? And then as you begin to hinge forward, imagine that the pelvis is tilting forward, so those hip bones, rather than rounding out at the spine, you're creating the movement from the pelvis around the hip joints. And then walk the hands out. Trying to keep the toes and the knees pointed up toward the sky. So that's going to give us a little more of the counter stretch. So as the hips turn outward, we are moving forward. And just finding that breath. And maybe every time you exhale, you can come into that experience a little more. Walk your hands off to the right side so that the shoulders frame that right leg. And then begin to hinge forward at the hips again over that leg. Walking the hands back through center and off to the left leg now. Squaring off the shoulders to that left leg. Begin to hinge forward at the hips. Walk it back through center, and then you can walk your hands back up until you come up to a nice seated posture. All right, so we're going to take Gomukhasana, cow face pose here. So I personally like to sit up on a block for this just because it feels better on my knees and my hips, but you're welcome to do whatever feels good. So if we have our feet on the floor in front of us, you're going to take that right leg, crisscross it behind the left, and you're trying to line up the knee in line with that pubic bone. Sliding. And then you're going to walk that left foot over in an attempt to stack the knee over top of the other one. This might be enough here. Or you can reach one arm up and back, so let's go with the right arm, finding that space between the shoulder blades, and then lifting that left hand up and underneath to meet. The trick here is to stay nice and lifted, nice and elevated. The option is yours to use a strap to, if the hands aren't touching behind you, mine aren't. And then you're going to release the arms, go ahead and step your feet out in front of you again. Opposite foot now, we're going to take that left foot in and we're going to stack the right knee over that left. Maybe one side feels a little different than the other. It's all a practice. It's all where we are right now. And then that left hand comes up and behind. You're going to reach that right hand up and underneath. Maybe they touch, maybe they don't. Maybe you want to use your strap. But whatever you do, make sure that your spine is nice and long, nice and stacked. And find your breath here. Excellent job. Release those arms, and then you're going to release the legs, moving your props off to the side if you were using them. And then you're going to work your way down onto your seat. You're going to extend the legs out nice and long in front of you. Inhale, grow tall. Exhale to hinge forward at the hips. Paschimottanasana. Seated forward fold. Come on out of that. You're going to hug that left knee in toward the chest. Sitting tall, you're going to hover that right leg up and just begin to make some small circles with that leg. Saying hello to the hip flexors, asking some strength of them. Go ahead and reverse your direction here. Being mindful to stay tall and lifted. And then release that foot back down to the floor. Go ahead and cross your foot over the knee, and then you're going to take your spinal twist to the left. Stacking the vertebrae one on top of each other. Working with the breath into those new ranges of motion. And then release to come back through center. You're going to extend that leg out long, and then hug that right knee into your chest. Sitting tall and proud here. Hover that left foot up. Begin to make some small circles here, tapping into the strength of that psoas muscle, so that major hip flexor. And then reverse your direction. Release that foot back down to the floor. You're going to crisscross that right foot over and take your spinal twist to the opposite direction. Stacking those vertebrae, seated tall. And then releasing that twist. You're going to plant your feet in front of you here so that they're about hips distance apart. You're going to extend those arms out in front of you and then begin to keep that spine straight as you lower it down. Lower, lower, lower. Staying active in that core, really reaching through the fingers. And then finally releasing down to the floor when you are getting pretty close. Reposition your body so that you're on your yoga mat. And walk those heels up towards your seat. We're going to press our hips up toward the sky, finding our bridge pose, walking the hands together, and the shoulder blades together to open up into this little back bend here. Bringing those hips up as high as they can go. And checking in with the knees to make sure they're not drifting apart too much. Find your breath here. And then release the hands and begin to slowly lower it back down toward the floor. All right. So taking those arms out by your side, you're gonna hover the knees and take a spinal twist off to the right. Still being kind to your spine. Grasp the top of the knee and take your gaze down that left arm. Bringing those knees back up through center here, you're gonna take your spinal twist off to the left, taking the gaze down the right arm. And then using the core muscles to lift you back up, you're going to press the low back down into the floor, send your feet up to the sky, grasping the outer edges of the feet and drawing the knees down toward the mat, and glue your shoulders down to your mat as well. Try to get your tailbone down to the floor and notice what that feels like in your hips. Happy baby pose here. Begin to rock from side to side. Maybe you want to straighten out one leg when you rock back and forth. Adding a little more movement here. And then release the feet down to the floor. You're going to hug your right knee into your chest, kind of pulling that knee up and out to your right shoulder. And then reaching through the balls of the feet of the extended leg. Go ahead and swap your feet out, extending out the right leg here, drawing that knee up to the chest. And then go ahead and hug both knees in. And kind of uncurl that tailbone, trying to get the back nice and flat with the mat. Go ahead and peel your chest up, forehead to the knees, giving yourself a big hug here. And then finally releasing, allowing the backs of the hands to come down by your side, the legs to extend out nice and long, your toes fall open. Allow the shoulders to become so heavy that you just feel like your heart is so open to the sky. Feel the rise and the fall of your chest or your belly. As you begin to slow your breath and slow your heart rate. Feel the weight of the back of your body in the ground, your calf muscles, your thighs, your hips, your back, your shoulders, and the back of the neck, your head. Relax the forehead and the space between the eyebrows. Allow your eyelids to be as heavy as possible. Relax your temples, your jaw. Maybe opening up the jaw and giving it a wiggle from side to side. Relax your throat, neck. Drop the shoulders away from the ears, but allow them to become heavy into the floor. Your arms are heavy, the upper arm, the lower arm. The back of your hands just melt right into the floor. Your fingers curled slightly, but they're relaxed. Relax your abdomen and your low back. Release tension in the pelvic floor. And find how that might relax your back, your hips, the hip sockets. Allow the thighs to mount into the floor and the lower leg. Your heels are grounded. Being mindful of all of the small bones in your feet and the toes. Begin to draw your attention to the breath. If your mind starts to wander, it's all right. Kindly bring it back onto the breath. And as you begin to make some small movements with the toes and the fingers, bending one knee to press into that foot to take you off onto your side. Allow the head to stay heavy as you press it up into a seated position. Sitting tall and proud with all that length that you've just created, that openness in the heart. Bringing those hands to heart center. And may you continue throughout your week with that ease and that openness to change and different perspectives. And I hope that you enjoy your week, Leslie. And thank you so much for sharing your practice today. Namaste.